There is a word from the Lord, and it was read in your hearing, but I ask, amen, that you would allow me to read it for you again. It comes from Deuteronomy, the 30th chapter, starting at the 15th through the 20th verse. But we're primarily going to focus on the 20th verse. But let me read it in context for you again, amen. Moses says this word, "See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. And that I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, his statutes, and his judgment, that you may live and multiply, and that the Lord your God will bless you in the land which you go to possess. But if your heart turns away so that you do not hear and are not drawn away and worship But if your hearts turn away so that you do not hear and are drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I announce to you today, that you shall surely perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to go and possess. I call heaven and earth as a witness today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Therefore, Moses says, choose life, that both you and your descendants may live, that you may love the Lord your God, that you may obey his voice, and that you may cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, and that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to give to them. For a few moments, as we are gathered here together, amen, I want to speak to you from the subject entitled, Seeing Yourself in the Mirror of Your Choices. Seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices. As we continue to journey through this year with a profound perspective and purpose to see clearly with 2020 perspective, and as we celebrate our history by looking back to glean from our past, which in retrospect shows us how we must live forward, there is something that our forefathers and foremothers, we ourselves and the yet unborn must do in order to see the hand of God moving in our lives. Regardless to how old or how young you might be, we are all faced with having to make choices in our lives that has the ability to seal or jeopardize our faith. At the end of every choice, there is a decision that must be made. And at the end of every decision is the life we live as a direct result of the decision we chose to make. There is no escaping it. There is no sidestepping it. There is no ignoring it, nor is there any dismissing it. Brothers and sisters, boys and girls, we all have to behold ourselves in the mirror of our choices. This year brings us face to face with choices. Choices we must make that has the ability again to seal or jeopardize our faith. You don't believe me? Let me point it out to you. This year, we must choose which candidate that best represents our interests and who will lead this country with integrity, dignity, and class. Something we have not seen in a few years. And if we do not go out and vote, something we will not see in 4 more years to come. This year, we must choose in our general conference Episcopal leaders that will lead our Zion in 20 districts, which are in 29 countries across the length and breadth of African Methodism on 5 continents in a way that is pleasing in God's sight. This year, beloved, this day, this hour, this time, down to the very minute and second that we live and breathe, we will see ourselves in the mirror of our choices that we either enhance optimize our living. Mount Zion, I would like to suggest to you today that the decisions you make now, as a result of seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices, will impact you and the generations that follow. Yeah. Let me say that again. The decisions you make right now. The Bible says today is the day for salvation. Tomorrow is not promised. The decision you make right now as a result of seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices will impact you, but not only you, the generations that follow. Moreover, you must see clearly the choices that are presented to you this year, this day, this hour, this minute, in a way that positions you and yourself in the favor of God so that God may bless you and the generations that follow. When faced with decisions to choose between life and death, blessings and curses, I caution you to err on the side of Moses and simply choose life. Amen. If you decide to choose life, then there are a few things Moses suggests that we need to do to maintain living our best life. You ever heard somebody say, I'm living my best life? Well, there was a song, amen, I ain't going to go down the lyrics, amen, but I bob to it every now and then, because I not only want to live my best life right now, but I want to continue to live until I see what the end is going to bring for my life and the life of those around me. But Moses teaches us today that there's a few things, if we choose life, that we must do as a result of choosing or making the decision to live in this type of life. Yes. Number one, Moses teaches us love God. It ain't hard, it ain't complex. I promise you, the youngest child in here can understand it. He simply says, love God. Now, if you would, focus your attention on verse 20, because I promise you I will not move there. But in the context of our reading, we must understand that Moses is now on the last decalogue of his living. He is now talking to the children of Israel, getting them to remember and reminding them of all that God has done in their lives. But yet it's decision-making time. It's time to make a permanent decision. They can no longer go on living on what somebody else's did, but now they have to live for themselves. Look at the text. Verse 20 says that you may love the Lord your God, that you may obey his voice, and that you may cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days. Moses ends his third speech and final exhortation to the children of Israel with a call to action. This final call to action Moses presents to his people causes them to look at themselves through the mirror of their own choices, to make and decide their fate, not only then, but for the future. But what I like about Moses is that he does not leave them wondering on what choice they were to take. He did not leave them wondering what is the appropriate choice to make in a situation like this. Moses says and urges the people while yet talking to them, choose life. Amen. See, this day I present to you life and blessings, death and evil. But Moses says, I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm going to make it plain for you. Don't worry, I urge you to choose life. Amen. Like Moses, I urge you as your pastor to choose life, to choose to live your best life. Amen. Not only now in this moment, but continue to living your best life regardless to what somebody says or what somebody does or how somebody sets you up to fall in a pit that they would ultimately fall in themselves. Choose life. Amen. Michelle Obama said it when they go low, we go high. She was saying that they chose to live life by living on the high road. I encourage you to choose life and live on the high road of the blessings that God has for you. In other words, Moses urged the people while they were yet standing, seeing themselves in the mirror of their own choices, contemplating what choice they would make. Moses says, choose life. Can I tell you, brothers and sisters, that there will be some choices in life that will be hard to make. And there will be no clear perspective on which option you should choose. Oh, can I tell you that there will be some choices that we will have to make that will break our hearts and cause tears to roll down our face. Can I tell you this morning? When you see yourself in the mirror of your choices, you are not always going to like what's looking back at you. But I'm so glad that Moses did not leave them there wondering what they should choose, on a daunting reality, but he gives them some clear direction. He gives them some clear insight to this call to action. Moses says, choose life. Amen. However, choosing life comes with some requirements that you must adhere to. You got to first and foremost love the one who is giving you life. You got to love God. How can you love God whom you have not seen? The Bible says, and can't love the brother and the sister, the boy and the girl whom you see every day. Do you not understand that God created them just like he created you? Choose to love God if you're gonna live your best life. God makes it a point to put love at the center of God's relationship with humanity, and Moses teaches us that humanity must choose to make it a point to put love at the center of our relationship, not only with God, but with each other. Love is more than a four-letter word. It is the glue that binds our commitment to God and God's commitment to us. If you are going to choose God, then you also must choose to love God. Loving God is the fulfillment of the first commandment. After all, Jesus says it this way: love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. Why is love so important? Because God is love. We were created in the image and likeness of God. If we can't show love, then what are we doing? You can't have life and blessings without having God. And you can't have God without having love. For God, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. You can't have life without having God. That's right. Your love for God will give you the strength to make it through life's most difficult challenges. Yes. If it had not been for your love for God and God on your side, where would you be? Oh, when I was on the mountaintop, I love God. Oh, but when I had to travel to the valley, I still love God. When I was sick and down in my sick bed, I love God. But when God was blessing me, I love God. I don't know about you, but come hell or high water, I've got to love God no matter what. Amen. Because I can't have life without God. That's right. That's right. And I can't have love. That's right. Y'all don't hear me. Amen. But not only must you love God when seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices, but Moses tells us to obey God's voice. Look at the text. He says that you may love the Lord your God and that you may obey his voice. In 1986, during one of Dwight Moody's famous revivals in Massachusetts, a young man rose during the testimony portion of the revival service and said these words: I am not quite sure how, but I am going to trust God, and I am going to obey his word. Moody's musical partner jotted down the words of the young man's testimony and sent them by way of letter with a story attached to it to Reverend Simmons, a Presbyterian preacher who later wrote and birthed the tune of the famous hymn we know, Trust and Obey. Y'all know that song, don't you? Trust and obey, for there is no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. I believe this was what Moses was trying to share with us and the children of Israel. Moses was trying to impact on them that they are to trust and obey, for there is no other way, no other option, no other solution for you to have life and blessings. There's no other way to be happy in God but to trust and obey. Obeying God's voice in your life allows you to be led by God, to be led by the Spirit of God. God is not only love, but God is also the source of life. Well, how can you have life if you can't obey the source of life? If you are going to choose life, it will also be wise to obey the voice of the one who is the life giver. Disobedience leads to death and destruction, but obedience leads to a prolonged life. Somewhere I read, obedience is better. I don't know about you today, but I've come to the point in my life where obedience is better than sacrifice. Oh, when I just obey his voice, when I just obey his will, when I just obey his calling, I can live my best life. I can live in a way that I couldn't live when I was walking in disobedience. All I'm asking you to do is choose life, love God, and obey. I don't know about you, but I want to live and not die. Some people just want to die, and I ain't hating on your parade, but I want to live. I want to run on to see what the end's going to bring. 99 and a half just won't do for me. I want to give God my best and all that I can. I want to see the favor of God in my life. I want to live to see the fulfillment of God's blessing in my life. I want God to move like he's never moved before, but I got to obey his will. Or I won't see it. When seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices, and Moses teaches us to choose life, and in that comes some requirements to love God and to obey his voice. But finally, Moses teaches us, as he teaches the children of Israel, amen, to cling to God. What is Moses saying? He says that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your generations or descendants may live. Verse 20, that you may love the Lord your God, and that you may obey his voice, and that you may cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days. Finally, my beloved brothers and sisters, not only must you love God and not only must you obey God's voice, but while seeing yourself in the mirror of your choices, you must cling to God. To cling means to hold on to something tightly. It means not to loosen your grip, but to hold on so tightly that there is no way to let go. There is nothing that can get in between you and what you're holding. There is nothing that can penetrate a separation between that and what you're clinging to. Cling to God. Amen. If someone clings to something they have, they do everything they can to keep its engagement or its connectivity through difficult times. Moses teaches us today that we should choose to cling to our love for God and our obedience to God's voice like our life depended on it, because it does. If you choose life, then the fact that you can live your best life depends on your ability to love God, to obey his voice, and to hold on to God's unchanging hand. What you cling or hold on to in life gives value to what you are holding. Let me say that again. What you cling or hold on to in life gives value to what you are holding. If it does not have any value, you ain't so inclined to hold on to it. Oh, but if God means anything to you, you ought to hold on to God. And you ought to keep on holding on until he bless you, and you ought not let go.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
And the most valuable things we can cling to in this life or the life to come is God. Your prolonged life depends on your ability to cling tightly, to hold on and not let go of God's love, God's blessing, and God's favor in your life. God is looking for a few people that can hold on in the midst of turbulent times. God is looking for a few people that can hold on when the road is not smooth but it's rough. God is looking for a few good people who can hold on when the billows roll. God is looking for a few good people who can hold on when the waters of life are rough. God is looking for a few good people who can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil. God is looking for a few good people. Just like the army is, Miss Denise, looking for a good few people. But I heard somebody say, I'm a soldier on the battlefield for the Lord. Is that you today? Are you amongst the few good people that God is looking for? Come here, Jacob, and tell the people how you held on to God and you wouldn't let go until God bless you. Today is decision-making time. It's time for you to make a choice. It's a call to action to choose life. And in life and choosing life, you are choosing God. But you got to understand that you can't live this life no any kind of way. You got to live it loving God. You got to live it obeying his voice. And you got to live it holding on to his everlasting word. Because Jesus said man cannot live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth. Can you see yourself in the mirror of your choices? What would you choose today? Would you choose life and blessings or death and curses? Would you choose life and obedience or destruction and evil? It's your decision-making time. I've already chosen, and I choose to serve the Lord. It is the best thing I've ever done. I looked all over and couldn't find nobody like Jesus, nobody like God, nobody like the Holy Spirit. I've already made my choice, but you got to make your choice today to serve him.
Amen. Amen.
Or disobey. But every one of us have to make that individual choice. Amen. Children, at some point in your life, you got to make that choice. Amen. Because your mom and your dad will no longer be the covering over your life. You got to take accountability and responsibility for your own actions. Whom will you serve? There's some old folks in here who've been serving the Lord a long time, so they say, and ain't saved yet. Because they still have not decided to love God with everything that they have and to obey his voice and to cling to God like nothing else matters. But here's a call to action today. Like Moses, I call you to make a decision, to see yourself in front of the mirror and in front of the choices that you have to make, not only today that affect you now, but affect the generations that follow. Amen. Choose this day whom you will serve. I heard Joshua say that. But for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord.